Question 1. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a data breach due to insufficient access controls within the HRMS. Which of the following approaches best mitigates this risk in compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks governing employee data privacy and security? Option A. Implement role-based access controls within PeopleSoft HRMS, ensuring users only have access to the data and functions necessary for their specific job roles, and conduct quarterly reviews of access assignments. Option B. Rely on annual external security audits to identify and address any access control deficiencies within the HRMS. Option C. Grant all HR department personnel broad access to all employee records within the HRMS to facilitate quick information retrieval and cross-departmental collaboration. Option D. Focus exclusively on implementing advanced encryption for all employee data stored in the HRMS, assuming this will inherently secure access. The correct answer is A. Implement role-based access controls within PeopleSoft HRMS, ensuring users only have access to the data and functions necessary for their specific job roles, and conduct quarterly reviews of access assignments. Explanation. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a data breach due to insufficient access controls within the HRMS. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing operational efficiency with robust data security, particularly concerning sensitive employee information. The challenge lies in implementing effective controls without unduly hindering legitimate HR processes, all while adhering to U.S. regulatory frameworks governing data privacy and security. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the identified risk by implementing a layered security strategy. This involves a combination of technical controls, role-based access, and procedural controls, regular access reviews, aligning with the principles of least privilege and accountability mandated by regulations like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health information is involved, or general data protection principles applicable to employee data under various U.S. federal and state laws. This proactive and comprehensive strategy minimizes the likelihood and impact of a breach, ensuring compliance and protecting employee privacy. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical access controls without regular review fails to account for the dynamic nature of employee roles and access needs. This can lead to dormant accounts or excessive privileges, creating vulnerabilities that regulatory frameworks aim to prevent. Ethically, it demonstrates a lack of diligence in safeguarding sensitive data. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes user convenience over security by granting broad access to all HR personnel overlooks the fundamental requirement for data segregation and protection. This directly contravenes the principle of least privilege, a cornerstone of data security and a common expectation in regulatory compliance. Such an approach significantly increases the risk of unauthorized access, disclosure, or modification of sensitive employee data, leading to potential regulatory penalties and reputational damage. A third incorrect approach that relies on infrequent, ad hoc security audits without implementing preventative measures is reactive rather than proactive. While audits can identify issues, they do not prevent them. This approach fails to establish a continuous security posture, leaving the organization exposed to risks between audit cycles. This is professionally unacceptable as it does not demonstrate a commitment to ongoing data protection, a key expectation under U.S. data privacy laws. Professionals should employ a risk-based decision-making process. This involves identifying potential threats and vulnerabilities, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then selecting controls that are both effective and proportionate to the risk. This process should be iterative, with regular reviews and updates to security measures to adapt to evolving threats and organizational changes, always keeping U.S. regulatory requirements at the forefront. Question 2. System analysis indicates that a large organization is implementing PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS and is encountering differing opinions between the Human Resources Department and several operational departments regarding the classification of certain employee roles. The HR department advocates for classifications that strictly adhere to U.S. federal and state labor laws concerning employee status and benefits eligibility, while some operational departments prefer classifications that align with their internal project management needs, potentially blurring the lines between temporary and permanent assignments. The organization must configure the PeopleSoft system to accurately reflect these employee classifications in a manner that is compliant with all applicable U.S. regulations. Which approach best ensures regulatory compliance and mitigates legal risk? Option A. Adopt the classifications used in the organization's previous non-PeopleSoft HR system, assuming they were compliant with past regulations. Option B. Implement classifications in PeopleSoft that strictly align with current U.S. federal and state labor laws, consulting with legal counsel to validate the configuration and ensure accurate reporting for all employee types. Option C. Configure PeopleSoft using the default classification options provided by the software vendor, assuming these are universally compliant with U.S. labor laws. Option D. Configure PeopleSoft based on a consensus reached through departmental discussions, prioritizing operational flexibility while ensuring basic record keeping. The correct answer is D. Configure PeopleSoft based on a consensus reached through departmental discussions, prioritizing operational flexibility while ensuring basic record keeping. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, where different departments have varying interpretations of how to manage employee data, specifically regarding the classification of temporary versus permanent roles. The challenge lies in balancing departmental needs with the need for consistent, compliant, and efficient HR data management across the entire organization, adhering strictly to U.S. labor laws and regulations as they pertain to employee classification and record keeping. Misclassification can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing U.S. federal and state labor laws, particularly those governing employment classifications e.g. Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) for overtime eligibility, which is often tied to classification. It requires consulting with legal counsel specializing in U.S. employment law to ensure that the PeopleSoft configuration accurately reflects these legal definitions, and that the system's data structures support compliant reporting and auditing. This ensures that the system not only meets functional requirements, but also upholds legal obligations regarding employee status, benefits, and compensation, thereby preventing potential litigation and penalties. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to prioritize departmental convenience over legal compliance. If a department insists on a classification within PeopleSoft that does not align with U.S. labor law definition, it creates a significant regulatory risk. This could lead to misclassification of employees, resulting in violations of wage and hour laws, incorrect tax withholdings, and potential lawsuits. Another incorrect approach is to implement a configuration based solely on historical practices without verifying their current legal standing. Past practices may no longer be compliant with evolving U.S. labor laws or may have been based on outdated interpretations. Relying on such practices without due diligence exposes the organization to legal challenges. A third incorrect approach is to assume that PeopleSoft's default configurations are universally compliant without specific validation against U.S. federal and state regulations. While PeopleSoft offers robust features, its out-of-the-box settings may need customization to precisely match the specific legal landscape of the organization's operating locations within the U.S. Failure to validate can lead to systemic noncompliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach. This involves identifying potential areas of noncompliance, prioritizing them based on the severity of potential penalties, and engaging subject matter experts, legal counsel, HR compliance specialists early in the process. A collaborative approach between HR, IT, and legal departments is crucial to ensure that system configurations are not only functional, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Regular audits and updates to configurations based on changes in U.S. labor law are also essential components of professional HRMS management. Question 3. Assessment of how to best integrate a sales department's unique commission-based compensation structure and multi-level approval process into the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS, while ensuring compliance with U.S. labor regulations and maintaining system integrity. Option A. Create extensive custom code within PeopleSoft to replicate the sales department's unique processes. Option B. Insist the sales department uses the standard system without any modifications, despite their unique requirements. Option C. Configure PeopleSoft to accommodate the sales department's specific compensation rules and approval workflows, ensuring all captured data aligns with U.S. Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) requirements. Option D. Develop a separate manual tracking system for the sales department's compensation and approvals outside of PeopleSoft. Correct answer is C. Configure PeopleSoft to accommodate the sales department's specific compensation rules and approval workflows, ensuring all captured data aligns with U.S. Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, where a business unit's unique operational needs clash with standardized system processes. The professional challenge lies in balancing the desire for efficiency and consistency offered by PeopleSoft with the practical requirements of a specific department, ensuring compliance with relevant U.S. labor laws and company policy without compromising core HR functions. Careful judgment is required to avoid creating workarounds that could lead to compliance issues or data integrity problems. Correct approach analysis. Adopting a configuration-driven approach within PeopleSoft, leveraging its built-in flexibility for defining job codes, pay groups, and approval workflows, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principle of using the system as designed, minimizing custom code which is costly to maintain and can complicate future upgrades. Specifically, configuring PeopleSoft to accommodate the sales department's commission-based pay structure and multi-level approval process, while ensuring all data captured adheres to U.S. Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA) requirements for overtime and record keeping, is the most compliant and sustainable solution. This approach upholds data integrity, facilitates accurate reporting, and ensures adherence to regulatory frameworks like FLSA. Correct approaches analysis. Implementing a completely separate manual tracking system for the sales department's compensation and approvals would be a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This creates a silo of data, making it impossible to ensure consistent application of company policies and U.S. labor laws. It increases the risk of errors in payroll processing, potential FLSA violations due to miscalculation of wages or overtime, and hinders accurate overall HR reporting. This approach bypasses the intended controls and audit trails within PeopleSoft, leading to a lack of transparency and accountability. Developing extensive custom code to replicate the sales department's unique processes within PeopleSoft, while seemingly addressing the immediate need, introduces substantial long-term risks. Customizations are expensive to develop, test, and maintain, and they often break during system upgrades, leading to significant unplanned costs and delays. From a regulatory perspective, poorly developed custom code can inadvertently create compliance gaps, especially concerning wage and hour laws, as it bypasses standard system validations and audit capabilities. This approach also deviates from best practices for system maintainability and scalability. Ignoring the sales department's request and forcing them to use the standard system without any adjustments would be a failure in operational effectiveness and potentially lead to employee dissatisfaction and reduced productivity. While it maintains system standardization, it fails to acknowledge legitimate business needs and could indirectly lead to employees finding unauthorized workarounds, which would then create the very compliance and data integrity issues the standardized system aims to prevent. This approach lacks the necessary business acumen to effectively support organizational goals. Professional reasoning. Professionals should first thoroughly understand the business requirements of the department and map them against the capabilities of PeopleSoft. They should then explore all configuration options within the system to meet these needs. If configuration alone is insufficient, a business case for carefully considered, minimal customization should be developed, always prioritizing compliance with U.S. labor laws and company policies. The decision-making process should involve stakeholders from the business unit, IT, and HR compliance to ensure a balanced and legally sound solution. Question 4. Comparative studies suggest that implementing new reporting functionalities within PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS fundamentals can significantly enhance operational insights. However, a proposed new report aims to aggregate detailed employee performance metrics alongside compensation history. Before deploying this report, what is the most critical step to ensure compliance with U.S. federal and state data privacy regulations? Option A. Implement the report immediately to meet business needs, with plans to address any potential privacy concerns retrospectively. Option B. Rely on the default security settings within PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS fundamentals to automatically ensure data privacy for all reports. Option C. Conduct a thorough review of the proposed report's data elements against applicable U.S. data privacy laws, consulting legal counsel to confirm compliance before deployment. Option D. Proceed with the report's deployment, assuming that data residing within the HRMS is inherently compliant for all reporting purposes. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough review of the proposed report's data elements against applicable U.S. data privacy laws, consulting legal counsel to confirm compliance before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation where a new feature, while offering potential benefits, introduces complexities related to data privacy and compliance. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for enhanced reporting capabilities with the absolute requirement to adhere to data protection regulations. The HR department must ensure that any reporting solution implemented within PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS fundamentals strictly complies with the relevant U.S. federal and state privacy laws, such as HIPAA for health-related data and general data privacy principles for personally identifiable information, PI. Failure to do so can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of employee trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the proposed reporting feature against existing U.S. data privacy regulations. This means identifying what specific data elements the report will access, how that data will be used, who will have access to it, and whether any of that data falls under protected categories. The process should involve consulting with legal counsel or a compliance officer to ensure a definitive understanding of regulatory obligations. If the reporting feature, as designed, risks violating privacy laws, the best professional practice is to either modify the feature to ensure compliance or to forego its implementation until a compliant solution can be developed. This demonstrates a commitment to ethical data handling and regulatory adherence, which is paramount in HR. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the implementation of the reporting feature without a comprehensive review of its compliance with U.S. data privacy laws. This is a direct violation of the principle of due diligence and can lead to unintentional breaches of privacy regulations. For example, if the report inadvertently includes sensitive health information without proper authorization or de-identification, it could violate HIPAA. Another incorrect approach is to assume that because the data is stored within the HRMS, it is automatically compliant for any reporting purpose. This overlooks the nuances of data privacy laws, which often dictate not just data storage, but also data access, usage, and disclosure. Relying on this assumption could lead to the unauthorized disclosure of PII, violating regulations like the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, if credit-related information is involved, or state-specific privacy laws. A third incorrect approach is to prioritize the perceived business need for the report over potential privacy risks, with the intention of addressing compliance issues later. This reactive approach is professionally unsound and ethically questionable. It places the organization at immediate risk of noncompliance and demonstrates a disregard for employee privacy rights. The regulatory framework mandates proactive compliance, not retrospective correction. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to HRMS feature implementation. This involves 1. Identifying potential data privacy implications of any new feature or report. 2. Consulting relevant legal and compliance experts to understand specific regulatory requirements, e.g., HIPAA state privacy laws. 3. Conducting a thorough impact assessment to determine if the feature aligns with these requirements. 4. Implementing necessary controls, modifications, or safeguards to ensure compliance. 5. Documenting the compliance review process and decisions. If a feature cannot be made compliant, it should not be implemented. This systematic process ensures that business objectives are pursued responsibly and ethically, safeguarding both the organization and its employees. Question 5. Compliance review shows that the HR department is planning to implement a new module in PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS that automates the collection and storage of employee performance feedback, including qualitative comments from managers. What is the most critical step to ensure this implementation adheres to U.S. data privacy regulations? Option A. Implement the module immediately to leverage its efficiency benefits and address any potential compliance issues after the rollout. Option B. Rely on the vendor's documentation stating that the module is compliant with general data protection principles without specific verification against U.S. regulations. Option C. Proceed with the implementation, assuming that the standard configuration of the PeopleSoft module meets all necessary U.S. data privacy requirements. Option D. Conduct a thorough data privacy impact assessment to identify potential risks and ensure compliance with relevant U.S. federal and state data privacy laws, verifying data minimization, access controls, and retention policies. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough data privacy impact assessment to identify potential risks and ensure compliance with relevant U.S. federal and state data privacy laws, verifying data minimization, access controls, and retention policies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation where a new feature, while intended to improve efficiency, may inadvertently create a compliance risk. The challenge lies in balancing the desire for technological advancement with the absolute necessity of adhering to data privacy regulations. The HR department must proactively identify and mitigate potential breaches before they occur, requiring a thorough understanding of both the PeopleSoft system's capabilities and the relevant legal framework. The pressure to implement new features quickly can sometimes overshadow the due diligence required for compliance, making careful judgment paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive review of the new feature's data handling processes against the specific requirements of the U.S. regulatory framework governing employee data privacy, such as the Fair Credit Reporting Act, FCRA, if background checks are involved, or general principles of data minimization and purpose limitation under various state privacy laws. This includes verifying that the system is configured to collect only necessary data, that access controls are robust and aligned with job roles, and that data retention policies are enforced. This proactive, risk-based approach ensures that the implementation aligns with legal obligations and ethical data stewardship, preventing potential fines and reputational damage. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the implementation without a formal compliance assessment. This demonstrates a failure to uphold the duty of care to protect employee data and a disregard for regulatory mandates. It creates a significant risk of non-compliance, potentially leading to legal penalties and loss of employee trust. Another incorrect approach is to rely solely on the vendor's assurances of compliance without independent verification. While vendors may offer compliance solutions, the ultimate responsibility for compliance rests with the employer. This approach neglects the employer's due diligence obligations and could result in overlooking specific configurations or usage patterns that violate regulations. A third incorrect approach is to assume that because the feature is part of a widely used HRMS, it is automatically compliant. This is a dangerous assumption. Compliance is highly dependent on the specific configuration, implementation, and usage within an organization, as well as the evolving regulatory landscape. Overlooking this can lead to significant compliance gaps. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic, risk-based approach to HRMS feature implementation. This involves 1. Understanding the business need and the proposed solution. 2. Identifying all relevant U.S. data privacy regulations applicable to the data being processed. 3. Conducting a thorough impact assessment of the new feature on data privacy and security. 4. Collaborating with legal and compliance teams to validate the assessment. 5. Implementing necessary controls and configurations to ensure compliance. 6. Establishing ongoing monitoring and auditing processes. This structured decision-making process ensures that compliance is integrated into the implementation lifecycle rather than being an afterthought. Question 6. To address the challenge of ensuring accurate overtime compensation for all eligible employees in compliance with U.S. federal regulations, a PeopleSoft HRMS implementation team needs to configure the time and labor and payroll modules. Given the complexity of the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, and the potential for varied employee classifications, which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory adherence and minimizes the risk of wage and hour violations? Option A. Prioritize the rapid deployment of the time and labor and payroll modules, performing only basic testing of overtime scenarios for a limited number of employee types. Option B. Implement the overtime configuration based on the company's historical payroll practices, without a detailed review of current FLSA requirements. Option C. Rely on the standard PeopleSoft system defaults for overtime calculations, assuming they are pre-configured to meet all U.S. federal wage and hour requirements. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of FLSA overtime provisions and meticulously configure and test PeopleSoft time and labor and payroll to align with these regulations for all employee groups, including edge cases and varied pay structures. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of FLSA overtime provisions and meticulously configure and test PeopleSoft time and labor and payroll to align with these regulations for all employee groups, including edge cases and varied pay structures. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring data integrity and compliance with U.S. federal regulation, specifically the Fair Labor Standards Act (FLSA), when configuring timekeeping and payroll. The core difficulty lies in accurately capturing and processing overtime hours for a diverse workforce, where different employee groups may have varying eligibility and calculation rules. Misconfiguration can lead to underpayment of wages, which carries significant legal and financial repercussions, including back pay, penalties, and reputational damage. The need for precise adherence to FLSA overtime provisions, which are complex and have specific thresholds, makes this a high-stakes situation requiring meticulous attention to detail and a thorough understanding of both the system's capabilities and the governing regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review and validation of the PeopleSoft time and labor and payroll configurations against the FLSA requirements for overtime eligibility and calculation. This includes verifying that the system correctly identifies employees subject to overtime, accurately calculates straight time and overtime rates based on the FLSA regular rate of pay principles, and correctly applies the 1.5x multiplier for all hours worked over 40 in a workweek. This approach ensures compliance by directly mapping system logic to regulatory mandates, minimizing the risk of errors and subsequent legal challenges. It represents best professional practice because it prioritizes regulatory adherence and employee rights, safeguarding the organization from potential liabilities. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that the default PeopleSoft configurations for overtime are automatically compliant with U.S. federal law. This is a significant regulatory failure because FLSA rules are nuanced and may not be universally covered by out-of-the-box settings, especially for complex pay structures or unique employee classifications. Relying on defaults without validation exposes the organization to noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of implementation over thorough testing of overtime calculations. This is an ethical and regulatory failure because it demonstrates a disregard for employee compensation rights and the legal obligation to pay overtime correctly. The potential for underpayment, even if unintentional, is a direct violation of the FLSA. A third incorrect approach is to only test overtime scenarios for a single employee group, assuming that the configuration will apply universally. This is a regulatory failure because the FLSA application can vary based on job roles, salary basis, and other factors. A comprehensive testing strategy must cover all relevant employee segments to ensure consistent compliance. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing this challenge should adopt a risk-based approach. First, identify all employee groups and their potential overtime eligibility under the FLSA. Second, thoroughly understand the specific FLSA provisions applicable to each group. Third, meticulously configure and test PeopleSoft time and labor and payroll modules to ensure they accurately reflect these provisions. This involves creating detailed test scripts that cover various overtime scenarios, including different work schedules, holiday pay, and premium pay, and validating the system's output against manual calculations based on FLSA principles. Continuous monitoring and periodic audits of overtime processing are also crucial to maintain compliance. Question 7. Cost-benefit analysis shows that implementing a new module within PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS to automate the collection of employee emergency contact information could streamline data entry. However, This module requires storing additional sensitive personal details beyond what is currently captured. What is the most prudent approach to ensure compliance with data privacy regulations and maintain data integrity? Option A. Delay the implementation indefinitely until a perfect, risk-free solution can be developed, even if it means foregoing potential efficiency improvements. Option B. Proceed with full implementation of the new module immediately, as the efficiency gains are significant and the data is necessary for employee safety. Option C. Implement the new module in a pilot group first, conducting thorough user acceptance testing and a data privacy impact assessment to ensure all regulatory requirements are met before a full rollout. Option D. Deploy the new module but instruct users to manually verify all data entered against existing records to mitigate potential errors, without formal testing or assessment of the module's compliance features. The correct answer is B. Proceed with full implementation of the new module immediately, as the efficiency gains are significant and the data is necessary for employee safety. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, balancing the desire for advanced functionality with the practicalities of data integrity and regulatory compliance. The challenge lies in the potential for a new feature to introduce complexities that could inadvertently lead to non-compliance with data privacy regulations, specifically those governing the handling of employee personal information. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any system enhancement does not compromise the organization's legal obligations. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough risk assessment and validation process before full implementation. This aligns with the principles of responsible data management and adherence to regulatory frameworks. By conducting a pilot and seeking explicit user acceptance and validation against established data standards and regulatory requirements, the organization demonstrates due diligence. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of data breaches, unauthorized access, or incorrect reporting, all of which can have significant legal and financial repercussions. It ensures that the system remains a tool for efficient and compliant HR operations. An incorrect approach that involves immediate full deployment without adequate testing or validation poses significant regulatory and ethical failures. Specifically, it risks violating data privacy laws by potentially exposing sensitive employee data to unauthorized access or incorrect processing. This could lead to fines, reputational damage, and loss of employee trust. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on the perceived efficiency gains of the new feature without considering its impact on existing data structures or compliance checks, is also a failure. It overlooks the fundamental principle that system functionality must serve the organization's operational needs and its legal obligations. Ignoring the need for user training and validation on how the new feature interacts with sensitive data is a direct pathway to errors and potential noncompliance. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify the business need and the proposed solution. 2. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment, including technical, operational, and regulatory implications. 3. Engage relevant stakeholders, including IT, legal, compliance, and end users, throughout the process. 4. Develop a phased implementation plan that includes rigorous testing, pilot programs, and user acceptance testing. 5. Ensure that all system changes are documented and that training is provided to users on new functionalities and their compliance implications. 6. Establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure continued compliance and data integrity. Question 8. Operational review demonstrates that new employees are experiencing significant delays in completing their onboarding process within the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS, with some critical tasks taking several days longer than expected. The HR department reports that the system appears to be functioning, but the workflow is not progressing as anticipated. What is the most appropriate initial course of action to address these onboarding delays? Option A. Immediately request the IT development team to investigate potential performance bottlenecks within the PeopleSoft application servers and database. Option B. Advise the HR department to instruct new hires to manually bypass certain steps in the onboarding process to expedite completion. Option C. Conduct a detailed review of the PeopleSoft HRMS configuration for the onboarding module, examining delivered components, workflow rules, and security settings to identify any deviations from standard setup or business requirements. Option D. Escalate the issue directly to the PeopleSoft vendor support for a system-wide performance audit. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed review of the PeopleSoft HRMS configuration for the onboarding module, examining delivered components, workflow rules, and security settings to identify any deviations from standard setup or business requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation where a critical business process, employee onboarding, is not functioning as intended due to a misunderstanding of system capabilities and a lack of adherence to established configuration best practices. The professional challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the delay, which is not a technical bug, but a configuration issue stemming from a deviation from standard processes. This requires a methodical approach to troubleshooting, moving beyond superficial symptoms to understand the underlying system design and user interaction. The urgency is amplified by the direct impact on new hires and the potential for negative candidate experience, which can affect recruitment efforts and employer branding. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS configuration for the onboarding process, specifically focusing on the delivered functionality and any customizations made. This aligns with best professional practice by addressing the problem at its source, the system setup. By examining the delivered onboarding components, workflow rules, and security settings, the HRMS administrator can identify where the process is deviating from its intended flow. This methodical investigation, comparing the current setup against standard PeopleSoft functionality and documented business requirements, is crucial for pinpointing the exact configuration element causing the delay. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes accurate system functioning and efficient business processes, ensuring compliance with internal policies and potentially external regulations related to timely employment commencement. It also upholds professional integrity by seeking a solution based on system expertise rather than making assumptions or applying quick fixes. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves immediately escalating the issue to the IT development team for a code fix. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses a fundamental troubleshooting step, verifying system configuration. The regulatory and ethical failure here is the inefficient use of resources and the potential for unnecessary development work, which can be costly and time-consuming. It also demonstrates a lack of understanding of the HRMS system's architecture, where many business processes are driven by configuration rather than custom code. Another incorrect approach is to assume the issue is a performance problem and focus on optimizing server resources or database queries without first investigating the application-level configuration. This is a flawed strategy as it addresses a symptom rather than the cause. The regulatory and ethical failure lies in misdiagnosing the problem, leading to wasted effort and potentially delaying the resolution for new hires. It also risks implementing solutions that do not address the actual bottleneck in the onboarding workflow. A third incorrect approach is to instruct end users to manually bypass certain steps in the onboarding process to expedite completion. While seemingly a quick fix, this is professionally unsound and carries significant regulatory and ethical risks. It creates data inconsistencies, bypasses necessary approvals or compliance checks embedded in the system, and can lead to security vulnerabilities. Ethically, it undermines the integrity of the HRMS and the controlled processes it is designed to enforce, potentially violating data privacy regulations or internal audit requirements. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such HRMS operational issues should adopt a structured problem-solving methodology. This begins with clearly defining the observed problem and its impact. Next, gather all relevant information, including system logs, user feedback, and process documentation. Then, formulate hypotheses about the root cause, prioritizing configuration issues over technical bugs in the initial stages of troubleshooting for a system like PeopleSoft HRMS, which relies heavily on configuration. Test these hypotheses systematically, starting with the most probable and easiest to verify. Document all findings and actions taken. If configuration adjustments resolve the issue, ensure proper testing and change management procedures are followed. If configuration is ruled out, then escalate to technical teams with detailed findings. This systematic, evidence-based approach ensures efficient problem resolution, maintains system integrity, and upholds professional standards. Question 9. The assessment process reveals that the organization's PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS is configured to calculate overtime for non-exempt employees based on a simple hourly rate multiplied by 1.5 for hours exceeding 40 in a calendar week. However, the company also provides performance bonuses that are paid out bi-weekly and are considered part of an employee's total remuneration. Which of the following configurations best ensures compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, regarding overtime pay? Option A. Implement a separate manual process to calculate overtime on bonuses and pay it out in the subsequent pay period, independent of the PeopleSoft system's automated overtime calculations. Option B. Configure the system to include all forms of remuneration, including performance bonuses, in the calculation of the regular rate of pay for overtime purposes, and ensure the system applies the 1.5 multiplier to hours worked over 40 in the defined workweek. Option C. Adjust the overtime multiplier to 2.0 for all hours worked over 40 to provide a more generous overtime rate, thereby ensuring compliance. Option D. Maintain the current configuration, as the FLSA primarily focuses on the hourly rate and the 40-hour threshold, and bonuses are separate compensation. The correct answer is B. Configure the system to include all forms of remuneration, including performance bonuses, in the calculation of the regular rate of pay for overtime purposes, and ensure the system applies the 1.5 multiplier to hours worked over 40 in the defined workweek. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring compliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, when configuring overtime rules. The FLSA mandates specific overtime pay requirements for non-exempt employees in the United States, and misconfiguration can lead to significant legal and financial repercussions. The professional challenge lies in accurately translating complex legal definitions of workweek, regular rate of pay, and overtime into the PeopleSoft system's configurable rules, while also accounting for various pay types and potential exceptions. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of FLSA regulations and how they map to PeopleSoft's time and labor module functionalities. This includes meticulously defining the workweek, correctly calculating the regular rate of pay by including all remuneration, and accurately applying the 1.5 times the regular rate for all hours worked over 40 in a workweek. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the legal requirements, minimizes the risk of wage and hour violations, and ensures fair compensation for employees, thereby protecting the organization from litigation and reputational damage. An incorrect approach would be to solely rely on the default PeopleSoft overtime rules without a detailed review against FLSA requirements. This fails to account for the nuances of FLSA, such as the inclusion of bonuses or other forms of compensation in the regular rate, which could lead to underpayment of overtime. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a simplified overtime calculation that does not accurately reflect the FLSA definition of the regular rate of pay, potentially by excluding certain types of compensation. This would also result in non-compliance. A third incorrect approach would be to assume that all employees are exempt from overtime, without a proper classification process, which is a direct violation of FLSA. Professionals should approach this by first consulting with legal counsel or a qualified FLSA expert to ensure a complete understanding of the law's application to their specific business operations. Then, they should meticulously map these requirements to the PeopleSoft time and labor configuration, utilizing system features designed for overtime calculation, and ensuring all relevant pay components are included in the regular rate calculation. Regular audits and testing of the system's overtime calculations are crucial to maintain ongoing compliance. Question 10. Consider a scenario where a U.S.-based company using PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS receives a request from its marketing department for a list of all employees who have participated in recent wellness programs, including their names and the specific programs they attended, for a targeted promotional campaign. The HR department is aware that some wellness programs involve sensitive health-related information. What is the most appropriate course of action for the HR department to ensure compliance with U.S. regulatory frameworks and ethical data handling practices? Option A. Forward the request directly to the IT department to extract the data, assuming IT will handle any necessary privacy considerations. Option B. Review the request against the company's data privacy policies and relevant U.S. federal and state regulations. Identify the sensitivity of the data and explore options for anonymizing or aggregating the data before fulfilling the request, or seek explicit employee consent if identifiable data is necessary. Option C. Provide the marketing department with the requested list of employees and program participation details, as this is a standard internal request for business purposes. Option D. Deny the request outright, citing privacy concerns, without further investigation or offering alternative solutions. The correct answer is C. Provide the marketing department with the requested list of employees and program participation details, as this is a standard internal request for business purposes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data privacy and compliance within a U.S.-based organization using PeopleSoft HRMS. The challenge lies in balancing the need to provide accurate and timely HR data for reporting and analysis with the strict requirements of U.S. federal and state privacy laws, such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. If health-related data is involved, and various state-specific data breach notification laws, the HR department must ensure that any data extraction or reporting process adheres to these regulations, particularly concerning the protection of personally identifiable information, PI, and protected health information, FI. Failure to do so can result in significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and loss of employee trust. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the data extraction request against established data privacy policies and relevant U.S. federal and state regulations. This includes identifying the specific types of data requested, assessing whether it constitutes PII or PHI, and determining if the intended use aligns with legal permissions and organizational policies. Implementing anonymization or pseudonymization techniques where appropriate, and ensuring that access controls within PeopleSoft are strictly enforced to limit data exposure to authorized personnel are critical steps. This approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes regulatory compliance and data security, safeguarding sensitive employee information while still enabling necessary business functions. It demonstrates a proactive commitment to ethical data handling and risk mitigation, aligning with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation often embedded in privacy frameworks. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that immediately fulfills the request without assessing the data's sensitivity or the legal implications of its disclosure fails to adhere to U.S. data privacy laws. This could lead to unauthorized disclosure of PII or PHI, violating regulations like HIPAA, if applicable, and state privacy statutes, resulting in fines and legal action. Another incorrect approach, which involves providing raw, unredacted data to the requesting department without any form of review or control, bypasses essential security protocols and regulatory safeguards. This exposes the organization to significant risks of data breaches and noncompliance. Finally, an approach that delays the request indefinitely without clear communication or a defined process for review creates operational inefficiencies and can undermine trust within the organization, though the primary failure here is not a direct regulatory violation, but a breakdown in professional process and communication, which can indirectly lead to compliance issues if critical reporting is delayed due to unaddressed data access needs. Professional reasoning. Professionals in HR and IT roles dealing with HRMS data must adopt a risk-based approach. When faced with data access requests, the first step is always to understand the nature of the data requested and its potential sensitivity. This involves consulting internal data governance policies and seeking guidance from legal or compliance departments. The decision-making process should prioritize compliance with all applicable U.S. federal and state privacy laws. If the data is sensitive, appropriate de-identification or aggregation techniques should be employed, and access should be granted on a least privilege basis. Clear documentation of the request, the data provided, and the justification for its release is also crucial for auditability and accountability. Question 11. The investigation demonstrates that a recent update to U.S. federal overtime regulations has been enacted, impacting how compensatory time is calculated and recorded for certain employee classifications. The PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS system currently houses all employee payroll and timekeeping data. Which of the following actions best ensures ongoing regulatory compliance for this HRMS implementation? Option A. Assume that the current PeopleSoft HRMS configuration is sufficient, as it has been previously validated. Further action will only be taken if specific employee complaints arise regarding overtime pay. Option B. Rely on the IT department to automatically apply any necessary patches or updates to the PeopleSoft HRMS system based on general industry best practices for payroll software. Option C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the PeopleSoft HRMS configuration related to timekeeping and payroll processing. This review will involve identifying all affected components, assessing the impact of the new regulations on existing rules and calculations, and implementing necessary system adjustments with thorough testing and documentation. Option D. Conduct a brief internal discussion among the HR team to confirm understanding of the new regulations, and proceed with manual adjustments to payroll reports outside of the PeopleSoft system until a future system upgrade is scheduled. The correct answer is C. Initiate a comprehensive review of the PeopleSoft HRMS configuration related to timekeeping and payroll processing. This review will involve identifying all affected components, assessing the impact of the new regulations on existing rules and calculations, and implementing necessary system adjustments with thorough testing and documentation. Explanation. The investigation demonstrates a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring compliance with evolving labor laws within a specific jurisdiction. The scenario is professionally challenging because it requires proactive identification and adaptation to regulatory changes that impact data privacy and employee rights, directly affecting how HR data is managed and accessed within PeopleSoft. A failure to do so can lead to significant legal penalties and reputational damage. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a systematic and documented process for monitoring regulatory changes and updating system configurations accordingly. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and responsible data stewardship mandated by U.S. labor laws and data privacy regulations. By establishing a clear workflow for reviewing updates, assessing their impact on PeopleSoft HRMS, and implementing necessary changes with proper testing and audit trails, the organization minimizes risk and ensures ongoing compliance. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining the integrity of employee data and upholding legal obligations. An incorrect approach that relies on ad hoc updates or assumes existing configurations remain compliant is professionally unacceptable. This failure to actively monitor and adapt to regulatory shifts constitutes a direct violation of the principle of maintaining accurate and compliant HR data. Specifically, it risks noncompliance with regulations such as the Fair Labor Standards Act, FLSA, or state-specific wage and hour laws if changes to overtime calculations or record-keeping requirements are not reflected in the system. Furthermore, it could violate data privacy laws if new consent requirements or data access restrictions are ignored, leading to unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive employee information. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve establishing a dedicated compliance review cycle for the HRMS. The cycle should include regular monitoring of relevant U.S. federal and state labor and data privacy laws, a formal process for assessing the impact of any changes on PeopleSoft configurations, a change management protocol for implementing updates, and a robust testing and validation phase before deployment. Documentation of all reviews, assessments, and implemented changes is essential for auditability and demonstrating due diligence. Question 12. Upon reviewing the configuration of the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS system for a U.S.-based organization, a key consideration is ensuring that employee personal data is handled in accordance with applicable U.S. federal and state privacy laws. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance for sensitive employee information stored within the system? Option A. Adopting generic data privacy best practices without a detailed review of specific U.S. federal and state regulations that govern employee data within the organization's operational jurisdiction. Option B. Relying on the inherent security features of PeopleSoft HRMS to protect all employee data, assuming that the system's standard configurations are sufficient for privacy compliance. Option C. Implementing robust access controls and data retention policies that align with specific U.S. federal and state privacy statutes, prioritizing data minimization and purpose limitation in system configurations. Option D. Prioritizing the collection of the maximum amount of employee data possible to facilitate comprehensive reporting and analytics, with a general understanding of privacy best practices. The correct answer is C. Implementing robust access controls and data retention policies that align with specific U.S. federal and state privacy statutes, prioritizing data minimization and purpose limitation in system configurations. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring compliance with evolving data privacy regulations while leveraging system capabilities for efficient data management. The professional challenge lies in balancing the organization's need for comprehensive employee data with the legal and ethical obligations to protect that data. Misinterpreting or inadequately applying regulatory requirements can lead to significant legal penalties, reputational damage, and erosion of employee trust. The specific jurisdiction for this exam is U.S. federal and state regulations pertaining to HR data. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough understanding of the U.S. federal regulations such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, if health-related data is involved, and state-specific privacy laws, e.g., California Consumer Privacy Act CCPA, if applicable to employee data. It requires configuring PeopleSoft HRMS to align with these regulations by implementing robust access controls, data encryption where necessary, and clear data retention policies. This approach prioritizes data minimization, purpose limitation, and individual rights, like the right to access or delete data, which are core tenets of modern data privacy frameworks. It ensures that the system is not only functional, but also legally sound and ethically responsible, fostering a secure environment for sensitive employee information. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to assume that all data collected within PeopleSoft HRMS is automatically compliant with privacy laws simply because it is stored within a reputable system. This overlooks the critical need for active configuration and policy enforcement. A failure to implement granular access controls, for instance, could violate principles of least privilege and data minimization, exposing sensitive information to unauthorized personnel, which is a direct contravention of many privacy statutes. Another incorrect approach would be to prioritize system efficiency or reporting capabilities over privacy requirements. For example, creating overly broad data fields or retaining data indefinitely without a defined business or legal purpose would likely violate data minimization and retention principles mandated by various U.S. privacy laws. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the legal implications of data handling. A third incorrect approach would be to rely solely on generic best practices without consulting specific U.S. federal and relevant state privacy legislation. While general best practices are helpful, they are not a substitute for understanding the precise legal obligations that apply to the organization's specific data types and locations. This can lead to gaps in compliance that expose the organization to risk. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a proactive and informed approach to regulatory compliance. This involves 1. Identifying all applicable U.S. federal and state data privacy regulations relevant to employee data. 2. Conducting a thorough data inventory and mapping exercise to understand what employee data is collected, processed, and stored within PeopleSoft HRMS. 3. Collaborating with legal counsel and compliance officers to interpret regulatory requirements and translate them into system configurations and policies. 4. Implementing technical controls within PeopleSoft HRMS, e.g., security roles, data masking, audit trails, and administrative policies, e.g., data retention schedules, consent management to ensure compliance. 5. Regularly reviewing and updating configurations and policies to adapt to changes in regulations and business practices. Question 13. Risk assessment procedures indicate that the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS system will store a wide range of employee data, including personal contact information, payroll details, performance reviews, and health-related information. To ensure regulatory compliance, Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of data privacy and security for employee data within the United States? Option A. Collect all available employee data fields within PeopleSoft, assuming that broader data collection provides a more comprehensive employee record for future analysis, and rely on general security measures for protection. Option B. Obtain broad, one-time consent from all employees for the collection and processing of all their data within the HRMS, without establishing specific data retention or deletion policies. Option C. Implement a data minimization strategy, collecting only the employee data strictly necessary for defined HR functions, coupled with robust role-based access controls and anonymization techniques where feasible. Option D. Focus primarily on encrypting all data within the HRMS, assuming that encryption alone is sufficient to meet all data privacy obligations, regardless of the volume or type of data collected. The correct answer is C. Implement a data minimization strategy, collecting only the employee data strictly necessary for defined HR functions, coupled with robust role-based access controls and anonymization techniques where feasible. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations when handling sensitive employee information. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for comprehensive HR data with the legal and ethical obligations to protect employee privacy. This requires a nuanced understanding of the applicable regulatory framework, in this case, U.S. federal and state data privacy laws relevant to employee data. The correct approach prioritizes a data minimization strategy, aligning with the principle of collecting only what is necessary for legitimate HR purposes. This directly addresses the core tenets of data privacy regulations, which aim to prevent the overcollection and misuse of personal information. By implementing role-based access controls and anonymization where appropriate, the organization demonstrates a commitment to safeguarding sensitive data, thereby mitigating the risk of breaches and non-compliance. This proactive stance is considered best professional practice as it builds trust with employees and avoids potential legal repercussions. An incorrect approach that involves collecting all available employee data without a clear justification for each data point fails to adhere to the principle of data minimization. This can lead to unnecessary exposure of sensitive information, increasing the risk of privacy violations and non-compliance with regulations like the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA, or similar state-level privacy laws. Another incorrect approach that relies solely on employee consent without a robust system for managing and revoking that consent is also problematic. Consent must be informed, freely given, and easily withdrawable, and a system that doesn't actively manage these aspects is insufficient. Furthermore, an approach that neglects to establish clear data retention policies and secure deletion protocols for employee data after it's no longer needed creates a persistent risk of data exposure and violates principles of data lifecycle management mandated by privacy frameworks. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the specific HR processes and the data required for each. This should be followed by a rigorous assessment of the legal and regulatory requirements pertaining to employee data privacy in the relevant jurisdiction. Implementing technical and organizational measures to protect data, such as access controls and encryption, should be a priority. Regular audits and reviews of data handling practices are also crucial to ensure ongoing compliance and adapt to evolving regulations. Question 14. Examination of the data shows that the HR department is implementing a new module within PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS to manage employee medical leave requests and associated documentation. This module will contain sensitive employee health information, which is considered protected health information, FI, under U.S. federal regulations. The project team is discussing how to ensure compliance with the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act (HIPAA), while enabling efficient processing of these requests. Which of the following approaches best ensures regulatory compliance and protects employee privacy? Option A. Provide all HR managers with full access to the new module to expedite the review of leave requests, assuming they understand the sensitive nature of the data. Option B. Rely on the default security settings within PeopleSoft for the new module, as they are generally sufficient for most HR functions. Option C. Store all employee medical documentation in a shared network drive accessible by the entire HR department, with a verbal agreement to keep the information confidential. Option D. Configure PeopleSoft security roles to grant access to employee health information only to HR personnel with a documented business need, and ensure all access is logged and auditable. The correct answer is D. Configure PeopleSoft security roles to grant access to employee health information only to HR personnel with a documented business need, and ensure all access is logged and auditable. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation, ensuring data privacy and compliance with U.S. federal regulations, specifically the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, when handling sensitive employee health information. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for accurate HR data with the strict legal requirements for protecting protected health information. 5. Failure to comply can result in significant financial penalties and reputational damage. The correct approach involves leveraging PeopleSoft's built-in security features and adhering to established data handling protocols. This means configuring access controls within PeopleSoft to restrict access to employee health information only to authorized personnel who have a legitimate business need to view it. This aligns with HIPAA privacy rule, which mandates safeguards to protect the privacy of PHI. By implementing role-based security and data encryption where appropriate, the organization demonstrates a commitment to regulatory compliance and ethical data stewardship. An incorrect approach would be to grant broad access to employee health records, even if it seems convenient for reporting or analysis. This directly violates HIPAA privacy rule, which requires covered entities to limit the use and disclosure of PHI to the minimum necessary for the intended purpose. Another incorrect approach would be to store sensitive health information outside of the secure PeopleSoft environment without equivalent or superior security measures. This creates significant data breach risks and is non-compliant with HIPAA security rule, which mandates technical, physical, and administrative safeguards. Finally, ignoring or downplaying the need for specific training on handling PHI within PeopleSoft is a critical failure. HIPAA requires workforce training on privacy and security policies and procedures. The professional decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of applicable U.S. federal regulations, particularly HIPAA. This involves identifying what constitutes PHI and understanding the specific requirements for its protection. Next, assess the capabilities of the PeopleSoft HRMS system to support these requirements, focusing on its security modules and access control mechanisms. Develop clear policies and procedures for data handling, access, and reporting, ensuring they are aligned with regulatory mandates. Finally, implement robust training programs for all personnel who may access or handle PHI within the system. Question 15. Performance analysis shows that a recent legislative update mandates new reporting requirements for employee compensation and benefits, effective immediately. The HR department is responsible for ensuring the organization's compliance with this new regulation. Which of the following actions best ensures regulatory compliance within the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS? Option A. Rely on the IT department to interpret the new legislation and make necessary adjustments to the PeopleSoft system without direct HR involvement. Option B. Continue using existing PeopleSoft compensation and benefits reporting configurations, assuming they are sufficient until further clarification is received. Option C. Immediately implement broad changes to all compensation and benefits modules in PeopleSoft based on a general understanding of the new legislation. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the new legislation to identify specific data and reporting impacts, and then configure the PeopleSoft system accordingly to capture and report the required information accurately. The correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive review of the new legislation to identify specific data and reporting impacts, and then configure the PeopleSoft system accordingly to capture and report the required information accurately. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation and ongoing management, ensuring compliance with evolving labor laws while leveraging system capabilities for efficiency. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for accurate record-keeping and reporting with the legal obligations of the organization. Specifically, the introduction of new legislation requires a proactive and informed response to avoid penalties and maintain ethical employment practices. The complexity arises from interpreting the new regulations, understanding their impact on existing HR processes, and configuring the PeopleSoft system to reflect these changes accurately. Failure to do so can lead to significant legal repercussions, reputational damage, and employee dissatisfaction. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic review of the new legislation and its direct implications for HR data management and reporting within PeopleSoft. This includes identifying which employee data fields, policies, and reporting structures are affected. Subsequently, it necessitates configuring the PeopleSoft system to capture, store, and report on the required information in a compliant manner. This might involve updating data elements, modifying security profiles, or creating new reports. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the regulatory mandate, prioritizes compliance, and utilizes the HRMS as a tool to achieve this. It demonstrates a commitment to legal adherence and responsible data stewardship, which are fundamental ethical and professional obligations for HR professionals. Incorrect approaches analysis. Ignoring the new legislation and continuing with existing system configurations is a direct violation of regulatory requirements. This failure to adapt to new laws exposes the organization to legal penalties, fines, and potential lawsuits. It also demonstrates a lack of due diligence and professional responsibility in managing employee data and ensuring fair employment practices. Assuming the existing system configurations are sufficient without a thorough review is also a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach relies on assumption rather than verification, which can lead to undetected noncompliance. The new legislation may introduce specific data points or reporting formats that are not currently captured or are captured incorrectly, leading to inadvertent violations. Implementing changes to the PeopleSoft system based on assumptions or incomplete understanding of the new legislation is another critical failure. This can result in misconfigurations that either fail to achieve compliance or introduce new compliance issues. It highlights a lack of rigorous analysis and testing, which are essential for any system modification, especially when driven by regulatory changes. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured decision-making process when faced with new regulatory requirements impacting HRMS. This process should begin with a thorough understanding of the new legislation, consulting legal counsel if necessary. Next, conduct a gap analysis between current HR processes and system configurations and the new legal requirements. This analysis should identify specific areas of noncompliance or potential risk. Based on this analysis, develop a detailed plan for system configuration and process adjustments, including testing and validation. Finally, implement the changes, communicate them to relevant stakeholders, and establish ongoing monitoring to ensure continued compliance. This systematic approach ensures that all regulatory obligations are met effectively and ethically. Question 16. Stakeholder feedback indicates a significant concern regarding the accuracy and compliance of payroll processing post-implementation of PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS. During the initial risk assessment phase, how should the project team prioritize and address these payroll-related risks to ensure a successful and compliant go-live? Option A. Rely on the IT project manager's general understanding of payroll systems and past project experiences to identify and address the most obvious potential risks. Option B. Delegate the entire payroll risk assessment to the IT development team, assuming they have sufficient knowledge of financial regulations and business processes. Option C. Conduct a detailed, documented risk assessment involving payroll and finance subject matter experts to identify specific potential issues, analyze their impact, and develop targeted mitigation strategies. Option D. Perform a very general risk assessment, listing payroll errors as a single risk without further analysis of specific causes or impacts. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed, documented risk assessment involving payroll and finance subject matter experts to identify specific potential issues, analyze their impact, and develop targeted mitigation strategies. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in HRMS implementation where a critical business process, payroll, is identified as a high-risk area during the risk assessment phase. The professional challenge lies in balancing the need for thoroughness and accuracy in payroll processing with the practical constraints of project timelines and resources. A superficial risk assessment could lead to significant financial and reputational damage, while an overly cautious approach might delay critical business operations. The need for a structured, evidence-based approach is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process for identifying, analyzing, and mitigating risks specifically related to the payroll module within the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS. This aligns with best practices in project management and system implementation, emphasizing a proactive rather than reactive stance. By engaging subject matter experts, SME from payroll and finance, assessment gains credibility and ensures that potential issues are identified from the perspective of those who understand the intricacies of the process. Documenting the identified risks, their potential impact, and proposed mitigation strategies provides a clear roadmap for the project team and stakeholders, facilitating informed decision-making and resource allocation. This methodical approach directly supports the goal of a successful and compliant HRMS deployment, minimizing the likelihood of errors in a sensitive area like payroll. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on anecdotal evidence or past experiences without a formal, documented risk assessment. This is professionally unacceptable because it lacks objectivity and can lead to overlooking critical, context-specific risks associated with the new PeopleSoft implementation. It bypasses the structured analysis required to understand the unique vulnerabilities of the system and its integration with existing financial processes. Another incorrect approach is to delegate the entire risk assessment to the IT project team without involving key business stakeholders from payroll and finance. This is a significant ethical and professional failure. HRMS systems, particularly payroll, have profound business implications. Without the deep functional knowledge of payroll SMEs, the IT team may not identify all potential risks, such as specific regulatory compliance issues or complex calculation logic unique to the organization's pay structures. This can result in a system that is technically functional but operationally flawed, leading to payroll errors and noncompliance. A third incorrect approach is to conduct a very high-level risk assessment that only identifies broad categories of risk without delving into specific scenarios or potential impacts. This is insufficient because it fails to provide actionable insights. A risk assessment must be granular enough to inform mitigation strategies. For example, identifying payroll errors as a risk is too vague. A proper assessment would identify specific types of errors, e.g., incorrect tax calculations, missed deductions, incorrect overtime calculations, and their potential causes and impacts. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment in HRMS implementations by first establishing a clear scope and methodology. This involves identifying all relevant stakeholders, including business users, IT, and compliance officers. The process should be iterative, starting with a broad identification of potential risks, and then drilling down into specific scenarios, their likelihood, and potential impact. Mitigation strategies should be developed collaboratively and documented, with clear ownership assigned for each mitigation action. Regular reviews and updates to the risk assessment throughout the project lifecycle are crucial to adapt to changing circumstances and ensure ongoing risk management. This structured, collaborative, and documented approach ensures that potential issues are identified and addressed proactively, leading to a more robust and successful HRMS implementation. Question 17. Analysis of the ongoing risk assessment process for sensitive employee data within the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS system, considering potential vulnerabilities and the life cycle of data from collection to archival, is critical for maintaining compliance with U.S. data protection regulations. Which of the following best describes a robust approach to this risk assessment? Option A. Implementing a continuous monitoring program that includes regular vulnerability scans, access control reviews, and periodic penetration testing, with a defined process for addressing identified risks and updating security protocols based on threat intelligence and system changes. Option B. Deferring detailed risk assessment until a specific security incident occurs, at which point a reactive investigation will be initiated to identify the root cause and implement corrective measures. Option C. Conducting a single, comprehensive risk assessment during the initial implementation of PeopleSoft and relying on the absence of reported security incidents as an indicator of adequate security. Option D. Focusing risk assessment efforts primarily on the technical configuration of the PeopleSoft system, with minimal consideration for user access patterns or the physical security of the servers hosting the application. The correct answer is A. Implementing a continuous monitoring program that includes regular vulnerability scans, access control reviews, and periodic penetration testing, with a defined process for addressing identified risks and updating security protocols based on threat intelligence and system changes. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient HR data management with the imperative to protect sensitive employee information from unauthorized access. The PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS system, while powerful, can become a vector for data breaches if access controls are not robustly implemented and regularly reviewed. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that risk assessment is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process that adapts to evolving threats and system changes. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it aligns with the fundamental principles of data security and privacy mandated by U.S. regulations, such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for health-related data, and the general principles of data protection under various state laws. A comprehensive risk assessment that includes regular reviews, vulnerability testing, and an understanding of the data lifecycle within PeopleSoft is crucial. This proactive stance helps identify potential weaknesses before they can be exploited, ensuring compliance with data protection laws and maintaining employee trust. It also supports the principle of least privilege, ensuring users only have access to the data necessary for their roles. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on initial system implementation, without ongoing monitoring, fails to address the dynamic nature of security threats. This oversight can lead to regulatory violations, as many data protection laws require continuous efforts to safeguard personal information. It also creates an ethical failure by not adequately protecting employee data, potentially leading to identity theft, financial loss, or reputational damage for the individuals whose data is compromised. Another incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the absence of reported incidents as a measure of security is professionally unsound. Security is not about reacting to breaches, but preventing them. This passive approach ignores potential vulnerabilities that may exist but have not yet manifested as incidents. It is a failure to exercise due diligence and a disregard for the potential harm that could result from a breach. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes system functionality over security controls, even if it appears to streamline processes, is a direct contravention of data protection principles. While efficiency is important, it must not come at the expense of safeguarding sensitive employee data. This approach demonstrates a lack of understanding of the legal and ethical obligations associated with handling personal information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This includes identifying all sensitive data within PeopleSoft, assessing potential threats and vulnerabilities, evaluating the likelihood and impact of those threats, and implementing appropriate controls to mitigate identified risks. Regular reviews and updates to the risk assessment, informed by system changes, new threats, and regulatory updates, are essential components of this process. Professionals must prioritize data security and privacy, ensuring that all decisions are made with a clear understanding of the legal and ethical implications. Question 18. When evaluating a request from the marketing department for a list of employees who have recently completed a specific professional development training program, including their names and contact information, to target them for promotional offers related to advanced courses, what is the most ethically and legally sound approach for an HR manager using PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS fundamentals, adhering strictly to U.S. regulatory frameworks? Option A. Provide the marketing department with an anonymized or aggregated report of employees who completed the training, detailing the number of participants and the training topic, but without any personally identifiable information. Option B. Directly refuse the marketing department's request, stating that employee training data is confidential and cannot be shared for any external marketing purposes. Option C. Share the complete list of employees, including their names and contact details, with the marketing department, with a verbal instruction to use the information responsibly. Option D. Provide the marketing department with the list of employees and their contact information, but only after obtaining written consent from each individual employee for their data to be used for marketing purposes. The correct answer is A. Provide the marketing department with an anonymized or aggregated report of employees who completed the training, detailing the number of participants and the training topic, but without any personally identifiable information. Explanation. This scenario presents an ethical dilemma concerning data privacy and the responsible use of employee information within a PeopleSoft HRMS system, specifically within the context of U.S. regulations. The challenge lies in balancing the legitimate business need for data analysis with the employee's right to privacy and the legal obligations to protect sensitive personal information. The HR manager must navigate potential conflicts between departmental requests and establish data governance policies. The correct approach, which involves anonymizing or aggregating data before sharing it with the marketing department, represents best professional practice because it adheres to the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, fundamental to U.S. privacy laws like the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA. If health-related data is involved, and general best practices for employee data protection, anonymization ensures that individual employees cannot be identified, thereby safeguarding their privacy and preventing potential misuse of their personal information. This aligns with the ethical obligation to treat employee data with confidentiality and respect. An incorrect approach would be to directly provide the marketing department with a list of employees who have recently completed specific training, including their names and contact information. This fails to adequately protect employee privacy and could violate data protection principles. It exposes employees to unsolicited marketing communications without their explicit consent, potentially leading to a breach of trust and legal repercussions under various U.S. privacy statutes that govern the collection and use of personal data. Another incorrect approach would be to deny the request outright without exploring alternative, compliant methods of fulfilling the marketing department's need. While caution is necessary, a complete refusal without offering a compromise that respects privacy might hinder legitimate business operations and create interdepartmental friction. It fails to demonstrate a proactive and collaborative approach to data management. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to share the data with the marketing department, but instruct them to be careful with it. This is insufficient as it relies on informal assurances rather than robust technical and procedural safeguards. It does not establish clear accountability or enforce compliance with data protection policies, leaving the organization vulnerable to data breaches and privacy violations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Understanding the request and its business purpose. 2. Identifying the specific data elements involved and their sensitivity. 3. Consulting relevant data privacy policies and legal requirements, e.g., U.S. federal and state privacy laws. 4. Assessing the risks associated with fulfilling the request as is. 5. Exploring and proposing compliant alternatives, such as data anonymization or aggregation. 6. Documenting the decision-making process and the chosen course of action. 7. Ensuring clear communication and agreement with all involved parties. Question 19. The performance metrics show a consistent slowdown in the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS application, impacting user response times for critical functions like employee self-service and manager approvals. Which of the following approaches best addresses this situation from a risk assessment perspective? Option A. Advise users to be patient and wait for the next scheduled system maintenance window to address the performance issues. Option B. Immediately schedule a full system hardware upgrade to ensure the application has sufficient resources to operate at optimal speed. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis by examining system logs, resource utilization, and recent configuration changes. Then prioritize remediation efforts based on the potential impact on business operations and regulatory compliance. Option D. Focus solely on optimizing individual user queries without investigating broader system-level performance bottlenecks. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive root cause analysis by examining system logs, resource utilization, and recent configuration changes. Then prioritize remediation efforts based on the potential impact on business operations and regulatory compliance. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the HRMS system, a critical tool for managing employee data and compliance, showing performance degradation. This degradation could impact the efficiency of HR operations, potentially leading to delays in critical processes like payroll, benefits administration, and regulatory reporting. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of the performance issues and implementing a solution that not only resolves the immediate problem, but also prevents future occurrences, all while ensuring continued compliance with relevant regulations. The risk assessment approach is crucial here to systematically evaluate potential causes and their impact. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured risk assessment that begins with identifying potential causes of performance degradation. This includes examining system logs, resource utilization, CPU, memory, disk I/O, network latency, and recent system changes or updates. The next step is to assess the impact of these potential causes on business operations and regulatory compliance. For instance, a performance issue affecting payroll processing could lead to late payments, violating labor laws. By prioritizing risks based on their likelihood and impact, the team can focus on the most critical issues first. Implementing a solution, such as optimizing database queries, tuning application servers, or addressing network bottlenecks, followed by thorough testing and monitoring, represents best professional practice. This systematic approach ensures that the resolution is effective, minimizes disruption, and maintains compliance with HRMS-related regulations, such as those governing data privacy and accuracy in employee records. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a costly hardware upgrade without a thorough investigation. This fails to address the potential root cause, which might be a software configuration issue or inefficient code. Such an approach wastes resources and could still leave the underlying problem unresolved, leading to continued performance issues and potential compliance breaches if critical HR functions are compromised. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the performance metrics, assuming they are temporary or insignificant. This is a significant ethical and professional failure. Ignoring performance degradation in an HRMS can lead to data integrity issues, delayed regulatory filings, and potential breaches of data privacy laws. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the operational and legal implications of system performance. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a quick fix without proper testing or documentation. This could introduce new bugs or unforeseen consequences, potentially exacerbating the performance issues or creating new ones. It also undermines the integrity of the system and makes future troubleshooting more difficult, increasing the risk of non-compliance with data management and security regulations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such situations by adopting a structured problem-solving methodology. This involves 1. Problem identification. Clearly define the observed issue performance degradation. 2. Information gathering. Collect all relevant data including system logs, performance metrics, and user feedback. 3. Root cause analysis. Employ techniques like the 5 whys or fishbone diagrams to identify the underlying cause. 4. Risk assessment. Evaluate the potential impact of the identified causes on business operations and regulatory compliance. 5. Solution development. Brainstorm and evaluate potential solutions, considering cost, effectiveness, and implementation time. 6. Implementation and testing. Deploy the chosen solution in a controlled environment and thoroughly test its efficacy. 7. Monitoring and review. Continuously monitor system performance and review the effectiveness of the implemented solution. This systematic and risk-aware approach ensures that issues are resolved efficiently, effectively, and in compliance with all applicable regulations. Question 20. Research into the risk assessment process for sensitive employee data within a PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS environment. Considering U.S. regulatory frameworks, what is the most effective approach to identify and evaluate potential data privacy and security risks? Option A. Prioritize cost reduction by using a simplified, high-level risk assessment that only addresses the most obvious and severe potential data breaches, without a detailed analysis of specific HR data risks or regulatory compliance. Option B. Utilize a generic IT system risk assessment template and apply it broadly to the PeopleSoft HRMS, focusing primarily on technical system vulnerabilities without specific consideration for HR data types or relevant U.S. privacy laws. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS configurations, access controls, and data handling processes. mapping identified vulnerabilities and potential threats to specific U.S. data privacy regulations, and assessing their potential impact on employee data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Option D. Focus the risk assessment exclusively on the technical security features of the PeopleSoft software itself, assuming that vendor-provided security measures are sufficient and that no further internal assessment of data handling or access is necessary to meet U.S. regulatory requirements. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS configurations, access controls, and data handling processes, mapping identified vulnerabilities and potential threats to specific U.S. data privacy regulations, and assessing their potential impact on employee data confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge because the HR department is tasked with a risk assessment related to data privacy and security within the PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS, a system containing sensitive employee information. The challenge lies in ensuring that the risk assessment methodology aligns with the specific regulatory framework governing HR data in the United States, as implied by the exam's focus on U.S.-based HRMS fundamentals. A robust risk assessment must identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and the impact of data breaches, while also considering the legal and ethical obligations of the organization. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the core requirement of a risk assessment, identifying and evaluating potential risks to sensitive HR data. By focusing on the specific functionalities of PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS and mapping them to potential threats, e.g., unauthorized access, data corruption, system downtime, and vulnerabilities, e.g., weak access controls, unpatched software. This approach ensures a comprehensive and relevant assessment. This aligns with U.S. regulatory frameworks such as the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, HIPAA, for health-related data, the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, GLBA, for financial data, and general data protection principles mandated by various state laws and federal regulations that require organizations to protect personally identifiable information, PI. A thorough assessment of PeopleSoft's security features and configurations, in conjunction with an understanding of potential human errors or malicious activities, is crucial for developing effective mitigation strategies. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the technical aspects of PeopleSoft without considering the regulatory compliance implications would be professionally unacceptable. This would fail to address the legal obligations to protect employee data, potentially leading to non-compliance with U.S. privacy laws and significant penalties. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost-saving over thoroughness. For instance, by using a generic, non-HR specific risk assessment template, would also be a regulatory and ethical failure. Such an approach would likely overlook critical HR data risks and the specific compliance requirements applicable to employee information, such as those related to background checks, compensation, and benefits. A third incorrect approach that neglects to involve relevant stakeholders, such as IT security and legal counsel, would also be a failure. Risk assessment is a collaborative effort, and excluding key expertise can lead to an incomplete understanding of risks and inadequate mitigation plans, thereby failing to meet the due diligence expected under U.S. data protection laws. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Understand the scope. Clearly define the systems and data being assessed, in this case, PeopleSoft Enterprise 9 HRMS and its associated employee data. 2. Identify applicable regulations. Determine all relevant U.S. federal and state laws and regulations governing the handling of HR data. 3. Select an appropriate methodology. Choose a risk assessment framework that is suitable for HR data and aligns with regulatory requirements. 4. Identify threats and vulnerabilities. Systematically list potential threats, e.g., cyber attacks, insider threats, natural disasters, and vulnerabilities, e.g., software flaws, weak policies, inadequate training, specific to the PeopleSoft HRMS environment. 5. Assess impact and likelihood. Evaluate the potential impact of each identified risk and the likelihood of its occurrence. 6. Develop mitigation strategies. Propose controls and actions to reduce or eliminate identified risks. 7. Document and report. Maintain thorough documentation of the entire process and report findings and recommendations to relevant stakeholders. 8. Review and update. Regularly review and update the risk assessment to account for changes in the system, threats, and regulations.